I'm thrilled to host this webinar today, and we're incredibly fortunate. Obviously, we've just made Claudia like a bit like nervous, etc. But we're so fortunate that you've joined us, Claudia, from
Not
Newham
at all.
College in
It's fine.
London. Okay, and you bring, based on our conversations that we've had over the months and years, you bring a wealth of knowledge and experience in driving improvement and innovation at the college. And today, it's about sharing that culture of experimentation and the evidence-informed practice that's been going on. And I know that you actually post a lot on social media. I know in LinkedIn about
I
things
do,
that you're
yes.
doing. Yes, yeah. So today, you're going to share about this innovation to elevate using teacher experimentation, which is something totally new to me, and encouraging innovation. You're going to share good practice and how all these things have impacted on standards of the college. So you've got lots of things to share, Claudia. So
I do.
without further ado,
Let
all
me
right, I'd
share my
like
screen.
everyone to give me a warm welcome and welcome Claudia. So if you'd like to share your screen, Claudia, and over to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the wait. I'm really sorry about this. I'm just quickly going to share my screen. Just one moment. I've got what's going on. Hopefully you can see it. Oh, okay. Right. Okay, this is right in the middle. So hopefully you can see my screen, yes? Yeah, excellent. So I'm going to kick off. We're going to just quickly, what is on agenda? I'm going to go through the purpose of teacher experimentation. So why we did it, we branded it, the power of one, innovate to elevate, the importance of teacher-led innovation, just briefly, and I'm hoping to engage you as well. The journey at Newham College, so how we went about it, because this is actually a CPD program that we launched this academic year. Some of the themes of experiments, but you'll also have a chance to have a look at the a newsletter that we launched, the impact on teachers as we've seen it, impact on students, and generally a framework for embedding a culture of innovation at the college. So I think it is very good practice to always link it to a framework. I'll just minimize this. Sorry, I've got some technical issues here. I'm not sure if it is possible to use the chat, Andy, at all.
If the chat's there, people are willing to ask questions, and if you want to stop and then ask people some questions, then that's fine as well. And Liam's here to actually manage the chat and help us. So that's fine,
Okay.
Claudia.
Yeah. No, I just wanted to gauge some answers from the audience as well. So this is the front of the newsletter on the left-hand side, which I'm going to share at the end of the presentation. The session aims to explore how teacher-led experimentation has driven transformation at Newham College. And I included a quote from the newsletter, actually, that focuses on the courage to grow. We always encourage a growth mindset for our students, but it is very important that we mirror that for teachers too, so that we continue keeping them in that zone of proximal development, that stretch and challenge zone where we also want our students to be. So I would like to ask you why it is important that we have teacher-led experimentation. If you want to give some answers, that would be great. I actually could link it to Slido. Yes, so if you want to scan this QR code and post some answers, that would be great. I'm just going to give you a couple of minutes.
You're introducing loads of things in technology here, this Slido and things. I think you might end up with lots of questions about what this is and things like this is going on. You're opening a can of worms here, look, Claudia.
Well, I just wanted, because it is a presentation, but it would be nice to find out what participants also think about a teacher experimentation. I think it is it is important to gauge views from participants who are actually quite experts themselves in this.
Okay. Yeah, so as I said right at the very beginning, obviously I can see here there's a participant typing. This idea of teacher-led experimentation is quite new to me. Whether it's because of the wording you've used, but it's just interesting to find out what you've been doing here.
Yeah. All right, so I have some keywords that actually I've included there. So I think this is great. Engagement, lifelong learning, challenges. Yes, I'm not sure about field deal, but I think, yeah. Joy, definitely, absolutely. Okay, I'm going to leave this open just in case you want to add. Obviously, you can do so throughout the presentation. So what I actually picked a quote from Education Endowment Foundation. I have them in my head because I recently attended one of their conferences. So I started to look them up quite a lot recently. Teachers are more likely to implement and sustain effective practices when they're involved in selecting, adapting, and evaluating the approaches they use. So what we did was link this project, which was called The Power of One, Innovate to Elevate. This is the actual poster. It's not very well designed, but this is what we launched, and it is displayed in teachers' offices. We linked this to professional standards, the most relevant one from Education and Training Foundation, our professional standards 1, 9, and 10, but also to modern frameworks and initiatives like Education 4.0, Education for Sustainable Development, the digital capability tool from ETF again, but we also encourage them to use the JISC one, and LSIP priorities, especially when it comes to focusing on meeting skills needs for students. What the idea is that teachers best know their learners and context, and this was an opportunity to reflect and develop their pedagogical content knowledge, which stands at the core, as we're going to see. I think that bottom-up innovation, so the innovation that starts with teachers, definitely supports ownership, authenticity, and sustainable professional growth. Some of the things that were mentioned on Slido as well. So how we went about it, it was quite a journey, and it was a 1 year long journey. It's not a perfect journey at all, but we did launch it in a structured manner. So in term one, I launched an asynchronous resource. Normally, I would deliver an online training, but this asynchronous resource was easier to monitor in terms of attendance and completion, and that focused on the launch of experiment and links to pedagogical content knowledge. And so I put that on a Padlet, and I linked it to a self-reflection against professional standards. Following that evaluation, they had to complete a reflection where they had to explain the choice of experiment, which framework they would link it to, or which frameworks, and how it will enhance their pedagogical content knowledge. I linked that to the observation focus, which is on college IP, and I also launched that via CPD for observers. So the idea of experimentation always existed in our observation framework, but it wasn't really well emphasized. And this time round, we actually made it a focus. Our observations are not graded for permanent teachers. They are purely developmental. So in terms 1 and 2, so following this launch of CPD, launch of the project, in terms 1 and 2, we started the observation processes. There's always going to be a pre-observation coaching conversation, and observers are trained to have those coaching conversations that focus on how the experiments will impact students, but also other aspects of teaching standards that teachers are expected to showcase in their practice. I also started from term 2 a showcase of weekly newsletters. So I selected an experiment teacher, and I delivered a 1-page newsletter on Teams, and there's a Teams for all teachers in the college, so that there was at least one teacher was put on the spotlight in a good way on a weekly basis, and an experiment was showcased. I then launched the CPD event in February, beginning of March, which was a learning market event with the whole college, and it contained engagement pods. So teachers came together, they discussed their experiments, they discussed the impact on students and next steps, because they were halfway through the year, the academic year. So basically, this was an opportunity for them to reflect together, and they uploaded that on the Padlet. In term 3, we launched the peer observation process. This was not a mandatory process, but I encouraged teachers from all departments to engage in it, and they found it a really significant aspect of their practice, because again, it brought the focus on experiment. I launched a CPD resource, which I put on Edpuzzle. So it was a short video on what the process is like, what they need to do, but also some coaching conversations, so coaching questions that they can ask each other in order to complete the reflection cycle. We paired teachers, and teachers, because this was not a very formal process, just had to complete some cards. This is the back of the card here. So key things that inspired me, a challenge that I noticed, and something that I want to embed. We encourage that to link that to teacher experimentation. And at the end, this week, we had our last event linked to the experiments. So end of year roundtable talk. They weren't round tables, but they were table talks, where teachers who had been showcased throughout the academic year via newsletters were invited to be the hosts. So basically, to present the impact of their experiment to other teachers. It was a tea party sort of event. And again, quite informal, but there were some reflection questions that were available to teachers to discuss as part of those ongoing conversations about innovation. So, and those reflections could be uploaded on a Padlet. So that was the journey. So I'm going to just go through some of the experiments that I showcased. These were normally one-page newsletters, but I grouped them into themes. So one of the themes, digital, was a big one, and I encouraged them to use the technological pedagogical content knowledge model for this, the TPAC. One of them was Cradle. Cradle is an award-winning piece of technology that was brought to the college this academic year, and we had a very significant project that was also showcased in a research summit very recently via immersive rooms, colleges that had immersive rooms available, but we also launched it in health science and CPD. So that's a bit of a wider piece, a wider newsletter. Glow 3D and fashion, with a strong focus on education for sustainable development. A whole unit was developed, a whole qualification actually was developed around Glow 3D. Metaverse in ESOL was very meaningful to develop job interview skills using immersive environments, and AI tools for creativity and workload reduction. We had Teachermatic and Canva. We actually did a wider piece on Teachermatic, which we showcased recently for teach trainees. It had very strong impact in terms of developing standards. And again, I included a quote from Education Endowment Foundation: technology can accelerate learning when it is aligned to pedagogy. So it is important to see that intersection between technology and pedagogy. Another theme was developing learner voice and preparing them for exams, GCSE. So these are the actual newsletters that were posted on a weekly basis. So one of them was Padlet as an alternative to virtual learning environment, where students could access resources, go into breakout rooms, use it for self-study, but also for peer feedback. Debates to develop writing. I actually observed a session linked to that, a very meaningful one, because critical thinking was really well scaffolded and it was highly student-led. And dual coding in GCSE English, this was a result of a training that we had with Ross McGill, who delivered his very famous Guide to Memory training. Yes, that was in February. This very close to my heart is, and these were newsletters that reflected the communities of practice that were developed as a result of the experiments. This is evidence-based practice because, first of all, it brings teachers together. So there's an element of collaboration between teachers. Hattie said that collective teacher efficacy increases, has an effect size of 1.57, so really, really high. But cooperative learning for students also is part of evidence-based practice with an effect size of 0.53. It's also part of Marzano's top 9 strategies that work in the classroom in terms of improving outcomes. So one of them was cross-departmental peer tutoring between ESOL and inclusive learning, so our SEND students. That was done during Autism Awareness Week, but also throughout the year in mini projects. So basically, young ESOL students went to support students with high needs that developed their awareness of equality and diversity, but also their employability skills and their communication skills, so really meaningful. ESOL Community Cafe, this was a year-long project. All teachers from ESOL community were involved in this with all their students. So after sessions, they would come together. Students would bring drinks and their foods from back home. And they would sit in buzz groups. Each group had a different theme, topic of conversation. For example, British values, aspects of employability, equality and diversity. So it had a very strong community feel, first of all, but it also developed their communication skills. And a HE project, which was the PASS peer-assisted study sessions, which was a collaboration between digital level 3 and level 4. Obviously, we expect level 3 students to progress to level 4 in our provision. So that it was a great opportunity for level 4 students to actually tutor level 3 students in terms of development of skills. So they had 3 months to work on this. They would meet every month and they would focus on one theme. Presentation skills was one of them. Another one was time management, and another one was AI literacy. Very meaningful because level 3 students had an opportunity to go to Institute of Technology, which is an experience in itself. And finally, embedding elements, so that lots of ideas here. Sustainability was quite a big theme. We had projects around paperless classrooms that actually whole departments took, like SEND and ESOL. But the one that I showcased was sustainability in teacher education. That was done via tutorials, and our senior lecturer in teacher training developed resources and sessions, and then students took that over and aligned that in their subject area. So this newsletter actually contains some of their reflections. AI literacy in ESOL Young, very impactful because students didn't actually use AI, but they developed their critical thinking around the importance of using AI, so where it can help and where it can be detrimental. Partnerships with employers, Amazon for pre-apprentices, where they actually had an opportunity to develop their employability skills and digital skills in an amazing environment. So this was heavily showcased on LinkedIn pages. And the last one that I showcased was contextualizing LGBTQ+ in the workplace in ESOL adult classes. Very meaningful reflections I felt here from students in ESOL. So these are some of the experiments. Impact on teachers. I know that there's a lot going on these slides, but I included this. I wanted you to focus on the Venn diagram that that actually is the core of the experiment launch. So this is the pedagogical content knowledge. What I felt is that a lot of generic CPD that happens in colleges tends to focus on pedagogical knowledge, which means that we deliver sessions related to adaptive teaching strategies or collaborative learning strategies or even evidence-based practice. Other vocational CPD that awarding bodies deliver are focused on content knowledge. So it develops the teachers' awareness of their subject. But the most meaningful part is where these two intersect. So that is where pedagogical content knowledge lies. And I really like this quote from Lee Shulman. It is very old, but very impactful. Those who understand teach. It is about selecting the right tools in the right context for our learners and selecting the elements of content aligned with the appropriate pedagogical tools in order to deliver something that is impactful and actually develops knowledge and skills and behaviors that we expect from learners. Obviously, if technology is included, I encourage them to use the TPAC model. So actually add the element of technology and focus on the intersection of the three elements. All the experiments were linked to frameworks, at least one, and I believe that this developed teachers as designers of learning. It definitely encouraged an element of risk-taking, experimentation, and creativity. There was a high level of autonomy, ownership of projects, but also leadership, because teachers led on quite impactful, wide projects, and they managed to showcase them, which actually had a positive effect on their professional confidence. There was definitely a lot of collaboration happening, especially in those sessions around peer tutoring, peer-assisted study sessions, the ESOL Community Cafe. The photos that you see here are from our last event where we hosted the table talks, and there was a lot of pride that teachers took into showcasing that. For students, I found a really lovely quote from Jackie Rosa, published on the Association of Colleges. We can only develop autonomous learners through autonomous teachers. We simply cannot say we want happy, healthy, resilient, independent, confident, creative learners if we don't enable the same characteristics in educators. Basically, what it says is that teachers are also learners, so they are lifelong learners, and they need to take that ownership and those elements of resilience in terms of developing practice that works for their students. So a way to do that is to give them an opportunity to choose. So for students, and I included photos of students that teachers took as part of their experiments, there was increased engagement, agency, and lots of opportunities for peer learning. All of this is evidence-based practice, contextualized and real-world learning, for instance, to projects like Amazon, or using metaverse immersive technology, co-construction of learning experiences, and definitely a sense of belonging and inclusion, because there were so many projects around equality, diversity, and inclusion. So finally, how I thought about a framework that would be meaningful in terms of embedding a culture of innovation. Obviously, we're going to continue the idea of experimentation next year. We probably will rebrand it, so we'll call it something else rather than Power of One, Innovate to Elevate, because that's quite long. But I used a KEEP framework that was recently launched by Education Endowment Foundation, which is knowledge, engagement, execution, and practice. It is all about keeping momentum, I believe. So in order to build knowledge, there needs to be a culture of CPD. So we launched the Power of One. We launched the reflection tool for development of pedagogical content knowledge, links to frameworks. We gave examples of what worked and what the reflection would look like. We promoted engagement by keeping the motivation up, and that was built through coaching opportunities. I have either via observations or peer observations, recognitions through newsletters and showcase, and opportunities for those teachers to actually lead on CPD sessions. Execution, the focus on executions was done through opportunities to develop. So again, coaching via observations that were uploaded on College IP. There was peer coaching and peer observations available, peer support via learning market events. And finally, an opportunity to develop practice through purposeful and repeated practice to maintain focus. So that was done through the wider newsletter that I ended up publishing at the end of the academic year, whole college network events that happened this week, this showcase of good practice and use of reflection tools that were constant and very consistent. So cards, Padlets, and Microsoft Forms. So I would say if you scan this QR code, you can have access to the full newsletter. But I would now again encourage you to reflect. So if you're an educator, what is one small pedagogical question that you're curious to explore? And what might your own experiment look like? How will it develop your pedagogical content knowledge? So think about your pedagogy, really. This is how we launched it at the beginning of the academic year. Yeah, what is that question that you have in terms of pedagogy? And how will it link to the context in which you're teaching? If you are a leader, is there an opportunity for you to develop a similar approach, perhaps in your setting? So feel free to post that in the chat if you wish. And obviously, if you have any comments or questions, please feel free. But do access our newsletter because I think it is a great way to showcase examples of good practice.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Claudia. We do have a couple chats ready for you. Firstly, Jackie had said that she was very impressed with this session. She's had to run off now. I'm not sure if she's still sat in the lobby, but she's had to run off. But she'd love to catch up with you about this following the session. So that's the first one we've got. Then we've got Magdalena, who's saying it's an interesting session. However, supporting experiments are a long-established process at many colleges. What is unique about the approach at Newham?
I wouldn't say about uniqueness. I think that it was about this level of continuity that we encouraged. So we never let it go. There was always an opportunity. All colleges have CPD opportunities throughout the year, but we always brought it back to that element of pedagogical content knowledge. We always encouraged the links to the experiments. So all our observation processes, the peer observations were linked to experiments. There were reflection tools available that will link it back to experiments. So I think that it is very easy to lose momentum. That's why I use the CAPE framework, because I feel that by using that, constantly bringing it back, constantly using the showcase, that kept momentum, and teachers really took pride. And they went externally as well to present. So we had quite a few opportunities and quite a few events where teachers then went to present their experiments. I wouldn't say that anything is absolutely groundbreaking, and it was definitely not a perfect journey.
Perfect. It looks like Magdalena's actually just dropped out of the meeting, so I'll follow up with her following the session. But I've got a message from Paul and Wendy here. So I love the name, The Power of One. I'm interested in creating conditions for collaboration and curiosity. The engagement pods sound interesting. Could you tell us more?
Oh yes. So what we had, it was a learning market event. Actually, these are not the only newsletters. So we have teaching standards in the college, and obviously they are linked to monitoring practices. And I had started to develop newsletters with ideas on how teachers can develop their teaching standards. So every other week, I would publish a newsletter around pedagogical practice, and I encouraged them to link that to their experiments. So, maybe give them ideas on how to enhance their experiments. So when we did the learning markets events, a very wide one, throughout the auditoriums, there were learning markets with facilitators. Each learning market had an element of teaching standards. So based on the action plans that came out of observations, teachers would go to at least 3 of those learning markets. So that was the first step. The second step was to go into engagement pods, which were tables in the middle, and they had tablecloths. They were paper tablecloths, so they could actually write impact on learners, but they had to discuss with peers first. So they had to write the impact on learners and next steps actions, and then we photographed it and we put it on Padlet and we published it. So this was an event in 2 parts, but it was very, very meaningful because there was very strong engagement, and teachers got a lot of ideas, and then they developed their experiments. I'm not sure
Thank you, Claudia.
It's a bit long to explain, I think.
I'm sure Paul can let us know in the chat if he wants any further sort of detail on that. So we've also got Wendy saying it would be great to introduce a similar model across different curriculum areas. What sort of engagement did you get, and was this optional?
The reflection and choice of experiments was not optional. The only element we kept optional was peer observation because of the timing. I probably should have timed it a little bit different, but we kept that optional. What happened at the beginning of the year after I launched the CPD on Power of One, Innovate to Elevate, teachers had to complete that self-reflection against professional standard and then produce a paragraph of reflection, choose their experiments, link it to frameworks, and explain how it will develop their pedagogical content knowledge. And that was actually published on the dashboard on Power BI. So when observers went into observations, they could refer back to that. It also now links to SARS. So that part was not optional. All teachers had to complete that. But throughout the year, teachers actually changed their experiments, and that's absolutely fine. It shows how pedagogy develops really, and how their pedagogical content knowledge has that level of flexibility, and how things changed. And I thought that was I expected that, and I was very happy with that.
Paul has just said that's great. So you've obviously met what he was looking for in an answer. And Wendy's just said, really interesting session, Claudia. Thank you so much. So I think
Thank you.
Paul's still typing. So while he's typing that out, I'll pass back over to Andy to give you a quick recap of what College IP is itself, if anyone wants to stick around for just a couple more minutes, so we can show you the College IP system and what it can help you support for your colleges as well.
I'm going to publish the link to the newsletter as well, just in case someone wants to see it.
Perfect.
All right. Thank you, Claudia. I also, before I talk about College IP, there's certain questions. Obviously, you've introduced a lot of change while you've been there and bringing around change. And was it one of these situations where you had this idea and then you came to the college and it started off slowly and then gradually it got momentum as there were more faculties, more departments, more people that came on board? And I was just interested about the change, because there might be some colleagues here that are interested in this approach, but all the different elements that you mentioned can seem like quite a bit overwhelming about how we plan this, and you went through different strategies. So how was it? How did you more or less engage people? How did you sell it to people? That's a question I've got for you.
Do you mean how I sold the experiment?
Yeah, how you sold the whole approach to the college and the teachers and the leaders in the college to get them that initial momentum to then drive it forward? Because you mentioned the word momentum a lot, but you can't do everything, can you? So there's other people involved in driving this momentum. And I'm just interested, because that might be something someone goes, I'd like to do this approach, but how long will it take me to get to it?
It was a matter of engaging middle leaders who were actually part of the observation team. So they had the initial CPD around experimentation alongside teachers, and then they also had an additional CPD later on in the year, where there was a lot of focus on coaching conversations, because it's not just important to select an area for experimentation and just list it there in the observation and just leave it. It is important to have the ongoing conversations with teachers to promote that level of reflection, and I think it helps both. And because I then launched it via peer observations, that gave teachers an opportunity to develop their own reflection and coaching skills. So I thought that reflection played an important part of that. It encouraging teachers to reflect on what works well, and then encouraging observers to support that reflection. I thought that helps keep that momentum.
Oh, okay. And that one final question before I obviously show back college IP. The impact, obviously, by what you just said, it's got an impact on the quality of teaching, and and the main thing that I suppose that we're judged whether we like that word or not is the impact on your students with results and skills, etc. And have you seen over time that make a dramatic change as well?
With some projects, definitely, because we with some of the projects, for example, the ones that involved communities of practice, I made sure that I oversaw those. So there was a lot of monitoring of data, surveys launched. So the peer-assisted study session, something that I led on. But so was the peer tutoring one. Impact in terms of sustainability, for instance, there was, the paperless classrooms were actually quite good because there were targets around departments to reduce printing, and that was quite interesting. But they took it a step further and they started to embed sustainable development goals in their tutorial sessions and also in their curriculum. So I thought it was quite good to engage students in those processes. Some teachers did sustainable projects with students where they use recyclable materials to build different things, that increased our awareness, accountability. There were some charity events organized as well as part of the peer tutoring programs.
Okay, no, thank you very much. So obviously you mentioned college IP as a tool that's been helping you in this process. So if I'd like to just share my slide in case there's colleagues out there that want to know more about college IP. So hopefully everyone can see my screen now. And you can see we have aligned college IP as a platform to help Claudia with this approach. So it's a cloud-based platform. It's designed to help organizations to drive continuous improvement. It streamlines and centralizes and integrates key processes, whether they be in school or whether they be in colleges, etc. Linked to, as Claudia mentioned, the idea of the monitoring, the peer reviews, those type of things. It's linked to staff performance, professional development, and the overall performance of the organization. The whole mantra behind us is tackling what colleges, what schools, what other organizations are dealing with at present time about admin heavy workloads, like you mentioned about the idea of paperless, etc. And we're very much about workload and reducing that. The alignment of processes, there are lots of processes that occur in colleges, and the idea is just aligning them and bringing together in one platform an efficient data collection. And our system is used by over 800 organizations worldwide with 50,000 regular users. And we are aligned, so it's not our system that Claudia's had to align to. We align with what Claudia wants. So we have the mantra of understanding what college wants, and then we more or less create our systems to achieve those outcomes. So we have the flexibility. We have free, unlimited support because obviously as people are building systems, building processes, they need regular dialogue. We don't just give something to somebody and say, get on with it. And the idea is it provides dashboards of real information. And if you want to find more about college IP, obviously we weren't at the same level as you, Claudia, with different surveys there, but we have got a QR code as well to help people click on there. And we're on LinkedIn as well. So the idea is, please make contact, find out what we can do for you. And obviously we've been a tool that's helped Claudia on a journey. So I'm going to stop sharing there. And I don't know if anyone's got any questions.
No, I think that's great. Thank you very much, Andy. I'll be following up with everyone via email following this session once I've got the video formatted and ready to be uploaded, and that first 10 minutes cut off while we were having some technical difficulties. But I'll be following up with everyone now, and hopefully if anyone's got any more questions, I'll be able to pass those on to Claudia as well. But thank you very much for your time, Claudia. It's much appreciated. Absolutely fantastic session. Thank you very much, Andy, for co-hosting this, and thank you for everyone who joined us today. Thank you, Paul. You're very, very welcome. It was a great session. Thank you very much.
Thank you all. Bye bye. Have a good day.
Bye bye.